Okay, good morning to everybody. Thank you for joining as we continue Likutei Moharan Amud Yomi. So I had posted to the chat this document where I sort of summarized in some way the first 8 Torahs, and I really intended to print out copies for all the Chevra, and in the rush of yesterday preparing for the event, I neglected to do so. Maybe right after the shiur I'll just run off copies on the printer, and then for the Chevra stay for shacharis, which is most of us, at least after shacharis you can have a copy. But I think it's a very useful resource for those who are here in person who will have their copies, or for those who are listening to the shiur. And if you're listening to the shiur and happen not to be on the group, you're welcome to contact me. Somehow you'll figure out how to do that, which is not too difficult, and we'll be able to get you a copy. And if you do find it difficult, you can just send an email to lpitorah@gmail.com, LPITORAH, and we will get you a PDF of what I think is a very useful document. Did anyone ever look at it a little bit? You got to read it through? Yeah, so Baruch Hashem. It's just a great way to review. Even if you just turn to the last page and just read the cumulative flow, and it's just a quick chazara that helps you to remind yourself of all the different lessons and how they all contribute to a greater whole. And that's really the idea, is to demonstrate the way that Likutei Moharan is a singular consciousness, as opposed to just brief and independent flashes of lightning. It's all one R, and it grows and grows and grows, and it has one underlying and overarching theme. And that theme is Geulah. That theme is trying to give us consciousness that will enable us, even while we're in Geulah, to already begin to live with a Geulah consciousness. And in so doing, bring the Geulah closer and closer, which is what Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai foretold, like we spoke a little bit about also last night, that with the sefer and with these teachings, we're going to get out of exile amidst tremendous mercy, and not chas v'shalom, the opposite. So let's jump into Torah Tes, which we began very briefly last time. Let's just start from the beginning and try to really push forward as much as we can with Siyata D'Shmaya, so that we can finish Torah Tes at the end of tomorrow's shiur, and then hopefully Wednesday and Thursday, and maybe even Friday, which we'll discuss, what's not likely, but Wednesday and Thursday we'll be able to get into Torah Yud, which I think is awesome hashgacha, that it just so happens to be that with my trips to Eretz Yisrael and to Florida, and without planning this thing out, we're going to hit Rebbe Nachman's Purim lesson 2 days before Purim, which I think is absolutely remarkable, and it's something we have with our Sichos Run series all the time, that wherever we happen to be, it always correlates pretty much, or very, very often, with the Chag that's coming up, with the Parsha. It's unbelievable. So Haidul Hashem, a lot of hashgacha there, and let us jump into Torah Tes. Lashon Rabbeinu Zuchana Debracha Ta'im V'Sechas Yumud Yardu B'Mitzaylis Kamay Even. A reference to the Mitzrayim who are drowning by Kriyas Yamsuf, that the watery depths covered them over, and they descended down like stones into the depth of the Yam. Says the Heilige Rebbe Schus Yagan Aleinu, Ki ikra chiyas mekabel me'atfila. A person receives his or her primary life force from prayer. From prayer itself, not just from the things that we ask for in davening, but the act of prayer itself should give us life. As the pasuk says, and David HaMelech hints to this in Tehillim, Tefillah lekel chayai. On a simple level, he's referring to his prayer to the living God. But if you put the comma after lekel, so it turns out that David is actually saying Tefillah lekel, that when I pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu chayai, this gives me life. Right, and that's Rebbe Nachman's interpretation of these words. Therefore, a person needs to daven with all of his or her energy. When a person davens with all their strength, and puts all their strength into the letters of the tefillah that we're davening, the person's energy is renewed there. I am renewed every morning, like we say in Moeda Ani, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's faith in us is great, Rabba B'Nasecha, or it is so great to have faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Different interpretations, but be that as it may, says the Rebbe, Ki Emunah Hu Tefillah. Tefillah is an expression of Emunah. Perhaps the greatest expression of Emunah is prayer, like we've mentioned in Torah Zayin. Kamei Shekasav Yad of Emunah, it says by Moshe Rabbeinu, his hands were faith. The Targumai and the Targum Onkelos interprets that word Emunah as Prisa and Betzila spread in prayers. You see, literally, the word Emunah is synonymous with Tefillah. Tefillah is synonymous with Emunah. And we can understand when we take the concept of Tefillah outside the direct context of prayer, right, and we bring it more broadly into an immersive experience of faith, how that would renew a person's strength, right? Because to the degree that a person's away from emunah, like we learned in Torah Ches, a person doesn't have ruach chaim, a person is drawing ruach chaim from an artificial source, Torah Zayin, a person is in a state of putting pruta in the kiss, right? Meaning covering over this aspect of living life with wonder. That's a dead world. That's a person going back to Torah Aleph. Let's say if a person is living an Esav life, that's not a lichtig world. It's not a life that's lived in a world that's bursting with purpose and meaning and light and warmth and vitality. Right? That's a world of limitations that are absolute. That's a world of Mitzrayim. That's not a world of Eretz Yisrael. And that's a world that's stuck. That's a world of Amalek. Right? Asher karcha badarach. That's a world that's cold. But a person who has an opportunity, that tefillah for that person should be more than just sort of reading words off of a page, but it should be really an experience of emunah, like we learned in Torah Hey, for the mitzvahs to be a direct encounter with the divine. To such a person, tefillah lekel is chaya, and that brings a person back to life, and that enables a person to begin their day with such an infusion of emunah that they walk out of shul with a whole lot more energy than they did when they walked in. No, but that's a contingency. Tefillah has to be emunah. If tefillah is not emunah, it's not going to give us life, right? Meaning in this, that tefillah is emunah, so then chadashim labakarim, then we can be chadashim labakarim because Rabba emunah secha. Says the Rebbe Ois Beis V'da, person should know sheyesh shnei masar shvatim keneged shnei masar mazalos. There are 12 shvatim that are aligned with the 12 mazalos, with these 12 constellations, these intermediary forces, so to speak, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu filters down all the shefa that comes down to the world, like the Rambam explains, and other kadmainim, that come through these mazalos, that of course don't have any consciousness of their own. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running them, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu uses these mazalos to mediate the shefa that's flowing down to this world. And of course the root of the 12 is the 12 permutations, like we discussed last time, the 12 permutations of the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, right? That even though there are two Heys, and so some of them are not going to look unique because you don't know which hay is which, right? So the unique permutations are 12 of Yud Kei Vav Kei, and because that's 3 letters, right, times 4, and ultimately this is the source for all other structures of 12 that become the mazalos and the loftier realm, and ultimately in this world become the shvatim. We know that each shevet had its own particular nusach hatfila, and that shevet had its own unique path. If maybe we bring a chair, there's another chair over there. Had its own unique path. That its prayer should be able to reach HaKadosh Baruch Hu through that particular path. And each shevet and their prayer had the capacity to draw down shefa through one of the particular 12 mazalos, one of these 12 constellation forces, v'hamazal me'ir lamata, and that would cause the mazal to be activated and to shine below. The same idea, like we said before, about a lichtig, a shining world, that causes through tefillah, through emunah, a person's able to have activated another aspect of existence, of reality, and that will cause for the growing of and the flourishing of the plants, or shar dvar or anything else that the person is praying for on whatever strata of existence, that whatever's under that mazel will begin to grow through that particular shevet. And that's how it was when Klal Yisrael was b'tikuna with the 12 shvatim, each of them knowing who they were, what their nusach tefillah were, and they were literally, controlling the world, just like the stereotype says, just not in the way that they think. We were really, in a certain sense, drawing down all the shefa in a very, very hyper particular sense. That's pshat in the pasuk about Midbar Dar Koichav Yaakov becomes Shevet Yisrael. A star will go out from Yaakov Avinu, from Yaakov, from Klal Yisrael, become Shevet Yisrael, and a Shevet will arise in Klal Yisrael. Says the Rebbe, you got to read the pasuk backwards. You got to start from become Shevet Yisrael, and this is a method that Rebbe Nachman uses again and again and again. He goes to the end of the pasuk and he reads it, shedding light on the beginning of the pasuk, which I'm sure there's depth to that methodology, starting at the end and then going back to the beginning, which we can think for ourselves. What the implication of that might be. Says the Rebbe, start with the word v'kam. V'kam means to stand up. Says the Rebbe, b'chinas amida, b'chinas tefillah. This is going to be a reference to prayer, which we know tefillah is always called the amida. Right? Amida, la'amod, to stand up in prayer. V'kam is a bechina of tefillah. V'kam shevet mi Yisrael, when one of the shvatim in Klal Yisrael would stand up in tefillah, aymid le'espalel, go to the beginning of the pasuk, ayidei zeh ma'ir koichav. Darach koichav miyakov. That would cause one of the mazalis to shine, because and then become shevet b'Yisrael. Because become shevet b'Yisrael, because one of the shvatim stood up to daven, the amida memela darach koichav miyakov. This caused one of the constellations to illuminate. Ba'koichav u'doirech u'mak adavarim sheyugdilu. And the star is shining, and the star travels, so to speak, u'mak adavarim sheyugdilu, and it compels the things under its dominion. Again, it's not its dominion, chas v'shalom, it's Hashem's dominion, but under its what's a better word to use? Influence. Influence, maybe. Yeah? Sphere of influence. Good, that's good. Under its influence, it's not it, right? Chas v'shalom. Under its influence, it will cause that thing to grow. You do not have one blade of grass below that doesn't have an angel and a koichav that standing above it, that's hitting it gedal and telling it and compelling it grow. So you see that it's under the influences of the malachim, of the koichavim. Chazal tell us that two things are difficult like kriyas yamsuf, and so many interpretations of what this means. We're just going to learn it locally and apply and try to stay just on the page for now. Kashem is a noisav kriyas yamsuf. A person's parnasa is difficult like kriyas yamsuf, and Makash is a vugai, and finding a soulmate is difficult like kriyas yamsuf, with all of the myriad meanings of what this means. But the Rebbe learns this in accordance with what we're revealing about the Shvatim and the relationship with prayer and their capacity to impact the mazalos that then influence parts of this worldliness. Why are we making reference to the Yamsuf here? Because the Yamsuf split into 12 pathways, as we know. Keneged Shnei Maser Shvatim is a Pirkei the Rebbe Lezer, and he brings from many sources to Kunizayar. It's split in 12 rows that are associated with the 12 Shvatim, and each of the 12 Shvatim pass through their own lane. And Klal Yisrael in our prayer cause for there to be a zivug, for there to be a unification between Kudsha B'richu, which is the transcendent element of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, meaning God as God above in the spiritual realm, and the potential latent godliness that is literally within this world that's bringing this reality into being. That's either hidden, that's called Shchinta B'Galusa, and that's because our subjective perspective is excising God's presence from the world, because we look at the world through Esav eyes and we don't see our HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence. That's Shchinta B'Galusa. And the Shechina not in Galus is when we live with the realization that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is present in this world. And in so doing, this world is shining, and this world becomes a realm that does not conceal HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but Adrabah reveals Hashem, right? And that's the Shechina out of Galus. And that happens when we make a zivug between Kudsha B'richu u'Shchinte. When we live in this world, surrounded by an apparently natural world, and we engage with nature, using our consciousness of Kudsha B'richu, of the Torah, of Hashem's Ratzon, and in so doing, we are activating the godliness in everything that we encounter. Every food that we eat, we make a bracha, Yichud Kudsha B'richu Shchinte, right? You just drew out and activated the Shechina, the indwelling presence of God, in its interaction with a consciousness that's connected to Kudsha B'richu, and that makes a unification between the two. And the more that we do this, the more that we're getting closer and closer to the Geulah, as we reveal the latent godliness that's hidden in every single aspect of the human experience and all of nature and every moment in time and so on. That's the Shechina. So Klal Yisrael in our tefillah, there's no greater zivuk Kudsha B'richu Shchinte than prayer. Because that's literally what we're doing. We're standing in this world, we're oimed as human beings in this world, and we're conscious of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And in that moment, we're making the most incredible yichud, Kudsha B'richu Shchinte, as the pasuk says in Tehillim, Soilu l'roichev arabos. Give praise to the one who rides upon arabos, which is one of the heavens. That's what it means on a simple level. Says Rebbe Nachman, roichev da Kudsha B'richu. Roichev is going to be an aspect of what's called Kudsha B'richu HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is a transcendent element of God, who is Roichev, because he's the rider, right, so to speak. He's in control, meaning he's the one who's transcendent, who's above, and that's the aspect of riding. Aravais is a reference to the Shechina, the Shchinte. And the reason why the Shechina is called Aravais is Shenis Arev Ba Kal HaGvanim. The Shechina, which is the sphere of Malchus, right, that which is indwelling, the lowest realm, is Me'urav, is a mixture of all the other elements that are coming down into the sphere of Malchus from Chesed and Gevurah and Tiferes and Netzach Hod Yesod, each of which correlate to the 6 colors of the spectrum, ultimately come down into Malchus. Malchus is alternatively black or Tcheles, or it's a color that includes, like if you have all the colors together, that's Malchus, right? And it's Arav B'Kol HaGvanim. Or alternatively, David HaMelech is compared to an eye that had all the colors in it. David HaMelech was like shining with a multicolored coat. Interestingly enough, it's an aspect of Yosef, but maybe Mashiach ben David is the garment of Yosef, Mashiach ben Yosef. These are two elements that interplay. But this aspect of a multicolored entity, that's Malchus, right? Which
are like the Rishon.
What's that?
The Arovas themselves are the Rishon, which correspond like the Chelban on the
beautiful. Yes, it corresponds to the last hay of Yud Kei Vav Kei, right? No, it actually doesn't. I'm sorry, but it doesn't. But it is connected to David HaMelech, right? Because Yom Da'arava is David HaMelech's Indian, so that's a connection in another way. Okay, the esrog is not the Aravas. I mean, in a certain sense, they're not mamish the 4 minim, but that's a slightly separate nakuda. Okay, so let's jump back in the Aravas. Yeah, Sailu. L'roichev aravos, says Rebbe Nachman, roichev HaKadosh Baruch Hu, aravos shchinte. And what the Rebbe is doing over here is he's telling us, look at the first word in this 3-word formulation. The first word soilu means to praise. So says the Rebbe, it's a reference to davening. So soilu, when you daven, l'roichev aravos. What you're doing is you're bringing together the roichev, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and aravos, which is the Shechina. Shenesar b'kol ha'gvanim ulefi hazivug shegoyrim b'tfilasai kein zeich lezivugoi. Says the Rebbe, the more that a person not just is davening really hard or is davening for someone else, or all these things are beautiful and they're real and they're true. But the Rebbe says it's deeper than that. If a person wants to find their zivug, and it's brought in Sfar Makdashim that even after a person finds their zivug, but there's infinite levels of finding your zivug from the standpoint of deepening the relationship, which is the tikkun that all of us have now before Mashiach comes, like it says in the Gemara in Brachas that the last mishmar of the Laila, Isha, Mesaperes, and Bala, right? And the Sfar Makdashim learn that nighttime is talking about gullus, so the final stage in gullus, the last mishmar, is relationships, as husbands and wives, parents and children, tinuk yonik v'shtei imai, right? It's working on relationships. There's infinite levels of finding your zivug, right, and clarifying that relationship. Says the Rebbe, it's going to be in accordance with the depth of the zivug that you're causing in your prayer between Kutsh B'richa and Shchinte. So it's not just how much you daven, but it has to do with how much is your tefillah an experience of emunah, right? Because if your tefillah is an experience of emunah, of a rabba, emunah secha, so then chadashim labakarim, so then you're renewed, then your life is renewed, then the tefillah is able to go up to the mazel and bring down shefa, because it's zelu umaz Hashem tzilcha. We cause Hashem zivug kiviyachal, and Kadosh Baruch Hu causes us to have our zivug. That ish and isha is of course just a physical manifestation, so to speak, or expression of kutcha brichu and shchinte, right? It's just the same thing, and that's the core and the code for this interaction between husband and wife. We said that tefillah is 12 nuschais. So it says Rebbe Nachman, that's the depth of what it means. Lefikach hazivug kekriyas yamsov. It's talking about the zivug between Kutcha B'richu u'shchinte, which is zivuga shel Adam elyon, which is a Kodesh Baruch Hu, kekriyas yamsov. And what caused the zivug? Kriyas yamsov, meaning 12 lanes, 12 shvatim, 12 mazales. Become shevet mi Yisrael, amida, tefillah, darach koichav mi Yaakov. Shem shnei masar, and that's the Indian of the 12 lanes of the yam.
Shvatim came out the same place they went in.
Yes.
Darach koichav mi Yaakov. It's darach.
Yeah, darach.
And then they came out and come shevet mi Yisrael. Now the Shvatim are here.
Gewalt. Gewaldig. Beautiful. So let's go a bit by. He says 2 things. Number 1, we're causing a zivug. Number 2, we're also mefarnes avim shabashamayim in some sense. He instituted it for Am Yisrael as a chayk. But we already said amida. We already said through, because v'kam is talking always about tefillah. L'chayk, says the Gemara in Be'ah, v'chayk lishtan de b'zaynahu. This word chayk could refer to sustenance. So v'yamidel Yaakov, when a Jew stands up, l'chayk. This gives sustenance to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There are many psukim like this that Chaim brings, right, about how Am Yisrael are moisifim koyach b'pamalya shamala. It's a medrash that we're causing HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be strengthened, as the pasuk says, Tnu ois lelikim, right? And there's an incredible thing that Am Yisrael, in some sense, have the ability to feed HaKadosh Baruch Hu k'viyachol. Yeah, and many other psukim, right? So, avoidetz l'tzarech gevaya, right? There are many different Mamar Chazalim psukim, excellent, that are hinting to this nikud of Am Yisrael supporting HaKadosh Baruch Hu k'viyachol v'chayk lish in the bezoynihi ve'ein amida el tefillah. So that's what it means. V'yamidel Yaakov l'chayk. So tefillah does two things. It makes the zivu kutcherichu shchintei, and it also brings HaKadosh Baruch Hu k'viyachol parnasa. V'zeh pirish shamre eidosav. When Am Yisrael keep the eidos, v'chayk nasan lamai. And we give HaKadosh Baruch Hu parnasa. Eidos zet tefillah. Kamay shekasav shiftei ka eidos lahoidos l'shem Hashem. So eidos is connected to prayer. Another connection. Eidos needs to be a ba'amida. What's amida? Is tefillah. Ba'amida is tefillah. Sh'anu me'idim ala chdusa. That's what tefillah is. We're giving, because Kriya Shema is like the essence, or one of the highlights of prayer is that, and we know that the large ayin, the large dalid, right, and Shema Yisrael Hashem L'Kashem Echad is 8, and we're giving eidos on HaKadosh Baruch Hu's achdus, as it says. A love, right? When we daven straight to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're made on HaKadosh Baruch Hu's achdus, that all of the energies of all the brachas, refuah and parnasa and das and slicha and everything that we daven for, just one address. Everything goes back to the one. We're made al achdusai. Says the Rebbe, it's the same thing. Just like by zivugim, we said the more that a person is davening in a way of yichud, that's causing that he should find, or that he should deepen his own experience of zivug. The same is true for parnasa. The deeper your tefillah is an expression of feeding HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, giving HaKadosh Baruch Hu what he needs, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mis'ava l'tefillas and shel tzadikim, and all of us are bringing our inner tzaddik to the fore when we daven va'amich kulam tzadikim, right? And in that sense, we're giving HaKadosh Baruch Hu what his desire is. So will a person receive his or her own parnasa. And that's the second expression. So he said, also parnasa is going to be associated with kriyas yamsuf, because in accordance with the difficulty of davening in such a way that brings mizaynos, so will it be to trigger down and to receive our mezainos. But ultimately it comes to Kriyas Yamsuf, which the Rebbe is learning as a reference to Tefillah via the 12 pathways, which are the 12 Shvatim, which are the 12 Neschais, which are the 12 Mazalos, which are triggering down Shefa from above. Haine mezainos neschalik l'shnei maser shvilim lefi shtei maser tefillas shiftei kal, like we said. Right? That each Tefillah is split, like again, into the 12 Neschais, and that's triggering down the mezainos, because we're causing, so to speak, the supporting of HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chvoid of ha'atzmi k'viyachal, as it were. V'tzarech lezeh schus gadol, and a person needs a tremendous schus. Sheyizka adam lahalis tfilasai derech shar hashayach l'shivtai, because we don't know who we are, we don't know what shvatim we are, we don't know what's going on. And imagine if we were able to find out, like, I don't even know what this means. He says, very difficult to know how to daven in such a way that your tefillah really goes up the right pathway. Rebbe Nachman makes reference to this, even though we don't usually like, as we're learning, we don't like to go to other Torahs. It's endless otherwise, unless the Torahs that we already learned. That's okay. I'm just going to make a brief reference to Torah Lamed, not Lamed, Torah Ayin Gimel. In Likutei Moharan Amud, where the Rebbe talks about Tehillim, we learned it with some of the Chavra, right, I think last year, right, almost a year ago, Pesach time. So we learned the aspect of Tehillim, right? It was an Elul? Okay. And we learned about Tehillim and how every single person has a gate that's shaykh for him, and how Tehillim can open the gate, right, that's shaykh for that person to help that person do tshuva. So there are ways that the Rebbe references over there. I don't know if it's exactly the same thing, but I think it's similar enough, right? That there's a shower that, that's shaykh for that particular person. But says the Rebbe, you need a big schus. You need a big schus that your tefillah should go in the right way. And this is what Abba ben Yamin is saying in the Gemara in Brachas. Kol yamai hayisim mitztar al shei dvar. He says, my whole life I was mitztar. I was very careful about two things. Number one, al tefilasa shetei samach limitasi, which just means al pi pshat that he davened very, very early. that it should be samach teis mita, that he should get up and daven right away, shouldn't get busy with other things. And number two, we're going to get back to that in a minute. Number two is that his bed should be placed in between Mizrach and Marav. That his bed should be placed between Safan and Darim, not Mizrach and Marav, right? North and south. Okay, these two things he was very careful about. So it says the Rebbe, what's the depth of that? You know what it means, Samach Limitasi? Because there are two words for the Shvatim in Klal Yisrael. There's Shevet and there's Mate. Says the Rebbe, Al Tegremita Elamate. He says what he was saying is, I wanted that my tefillah should be Samach Limatasi, to my mata. She is spalal derech shar hamata shalai. He wanted to make sure that his tefillah went through the right doorway of his shevet. Ki yesh shnei masar matos. So he said again, there are 12 shvatim. Echol echad yesh li shar miyuchad, and each of these shvatim has his own shar. V'spalal al shalai hidei srachik tefillah mimata shalai. Didn't want that his prayer should be distant from his own shevet. V'zel lashon mita, and that's really not just the aspect of the etymology between mentes he of mita and mentes he of mate, but actually that's what a mita is. Mita lashon zivug. Right? The concept of a mita is the place of zivug. Kamaim rasamach al mitasi shetei nesun, as we're going to learn in a minute. Umita b'china zivug. And so that's the aspect of the mita, which we already said. That's what the shvatim did. They were ma'orer zivuga de kuchrichu shchinte soilu cause roichev aravis. Right? The conjugation between roichev and our rabbis. And gam mate u'bechinas parnasa. Mate is also an aspect of parnasa, sustenance. When I broke for you, mate lechem, the staff of bread, right? But over here it's a reference to a staff in the context of sustenance, of feeding, of bread, that the right, pita salada deliba, right? That bread is the primary sustenance of a person. So that's mita, is both zivug and parnasa. And it's mate, right? Because again, the Shvatim are causing through their tefillah mita, zivug, and mate, right? Which is mate lechem, which is sustenance. And it's all wrapped up into the word mate, which is another word for shevet. It's all these three things are one thing. Mate and mita, right? Mate, shevet, mate, bread, mita, zivug.
And lechem is isha.
And lechem is isha, sure. We learned that in Torah Beis. We learned that, right? Torah Beis, excellent. Rebbe Nachman says over there also, right? Cooking, a certain aspect of cooking, bread, is the aspect of zivug as well. Because again, the 12 shvatim and the 12 tefillos and the 12 neschais are causing these two things. Kasha zivuga shaladam kukriyas yamsov, and kasha parnasas of shaladam kukriyas yamsov, parnasas shaladam kukriyas yamsov. Kasha zivudim and kasha mizanaisav. These two things. Okay, that was one thing he davened, that his tefillah should go in accordance with his shevet. Gam hespalal al shivta shiyizkul shtei shulchanos. He was also davening that he should be bezocha to two shulchanos, right? To these two things. V'zeu al mitasi shetei nesuna bein safon l'darim. What are the two shulchanos? Generally speaking, Chazal, when you say two shulchanos, you mean olam hazeh and olam haba. In this context, it's a reference to Oirech Yamim B'Yamina, which is a reference to Chochmah, Oirech Yamim, that a person should have quality of life, and of Ismaila Oisher V'Chavit, and also physical plenty and practical success from a this-worldly standpoint. These two things. So he would make sure that his bed is Tehei Nesuna Bein Safon L'Darim, between north and south, because Chazal tell us in a completely different place in the Gemara Baba Basra, Avchav Hey Amud Beis, apropos for these parashiyos, learning about the Mishkan. Ha'roitz alahachkim yadrim, and ha'roitz alahashir. No, the opposite. Ha'roitz alahachkim yatzbin, and ha'roitz alahashir yadrim. That a person who was standing in the Beis Hamikdash and wanted that he should draw down through his tefillah, he should draw down Chochmah, would turn to the north, which is where the menorah was positioned, which is the light of Seichel. If a person wanted physical plenty, he would turn himself to the south, which is where the Mizbeach was, which is the aspect of either the Mizbeach or the Shulchan, I can't remember now, the Shulchan, which is the paradigm for sustenance. See, he wanted, what's that?
North is the Shulchan.
So it's the opposite? So the menorah, okay, I'm sorry. So the menorah is in the south, I was thinking that Safin is the aspect. Yes, exactly, and that's why I got confused. Also, Marav and Mizrach. Okay, fine. Now we have it clear. Right, turning to the south, the menorah. Turning to the north, toward the shulchan. See, he put his bed, which is his tefillah. Now we're understanding mata, mita, zivug, in these two places. I want to just bring the chaver's attention for a minute to Torah Beis, because in Torah Beis we learned that a person who's davening has to have the cherev, and he has to know how to fight with the cherev, that it shouldn't be too much to the yamin and too much to the small. It's very shaykh that this is another element of what that means over there. We learned it over there that it shouldn't be too much idea, shouldn't be too much bechira, right? Because these are two things that are going to get in the way of tefillah, which is the aspects of the klipas of Esav and Yishmael, right? They're thinking that I'm the one doing it, and the Rebbe corrects that at the end. He says, no, it's all Hashem's chesed, you didn't do anything. And on the other hand, if I think that it's all Hashem's chesed, I don't have to daven in the first place, right? And that's the way that we interpret it over there. But this is another thing. His tefillah shouldn't be too much to the side of Chochmah, Olam Habadika thing, and not too much to the side of Olam Hazedika things. That's also Yamin Usmal, right? Which is Bechin of Arich Yamin Biyamina. It shouldn't be too much of the Yamin, and it shouldn't be too much of a Smaila Aishav Chavod, which in this context means north and south, right? So that's another, just to be ma'ir, another point. The Yaakov, he says, Shu Kalo Kalash Ne'emasur Shvatim, Yaakov Avinu, who's the aspect of all the 12 Shvatim, V'hiyadeh Kol Matu Matu B'Sharshay. He knew the source of all the Shvatim. Bishvil Zek Sivba. That's why it says about Yaakov Avinu, or Bei, Vayesav Yaakov Raglav Elamita. Yaakov Avinu drew his feet onto the bed. This is a reference to right before Yaakov Avinu is nifter from the world. All the Shvatim are gathered together. Yaakov Avinu draws his raglayim to the feet. He draws his feet to the bed. So bed, we already know what it means, right? So Mita, of course, now we learned, is Tefillah. Mita is the Shvatim. Mita is the Shevet. Mita is the source for all the Shvatim. The Bechino Zivug, the Bechino Parnasa, Kriyas Yamsuf, the 12 Shvatim, the 12 Mazalis. Tefillah. Darach Koicha Miyakov. And Raglayim, says the Rebbe, is a Bechinas Tefillah. His Raglayim, surrounded by all the Shvatim, as he was in that setting, is the aspect of prayer. Kamashikasot Tzedek Lefanav Yalech. His righteousness will proceed before him. Tzedek. The aspect of Tefillah. And that's what it means. Raglav elamita. Raglav is also the bechin of amida, because become shevet Yisrael. How do you stand up? You stand up on your feet. He drew all of the tefillahs of all the shvatim to their source, to the mita. Yaakov Avinu is drawing up each tefillah to its place. And that's also reminiscent of the tzaddik in Torah Beis, right? He's drawing all the different panels of the Mishkan, so to speak, as it were, from all the different members of Klal Yisrael. The tzaddik is putting kol shiaf of v'shiaf l'duchta. He's putting up each panel in its right place. And of course, the tzaddik, as we're learning, and as I demonstrated on that sheet, is all Yaakov Avinu consciousness. Just going back to Torah Aleph, it's one thesis, right? So it's all Yaakov, right? It's all Yaakov Avinu. So the tzaddik, who is a bechin of Yaakov, is able to put up each vayesav Yaakov raglav alamita. I just want to, I'm sorry, because we have so much to get to. Okay, but be sure to remember it and share with us afterwards, okay? So this is the Bechin of Yaakov. Because Yaakov Avinu had the aspect of being able to give the chalakim of this worldliness to Yosef Tzaddik. Another connection between Yaakov and Yosef. Torah Aleph, Torah Beis, boom, Torah Tes, like all about Tefillah and Yosef and Yaakov, right? So it's all interconnected. He gives Yosef Tzaddik one shchem above his brothers, and that aspect, because Yaakov Avinu had mitalish, mishmani arts, mitalish, he had all the goodness of this world, and he was able to give all of that over to Yosef Tzaddik. That means that through Yaakov Avinu's prayer, which was the aspect of connecting all the various tefillahs of the Shvatim to their source, he had the ability to bring sustenance to all levels of this worldliness, which are basically in the Kadmonim, it's called these three levels: Olam HaShafal, V'Olam HaKoichavim, V'Olam HaMalachim. These three realms, the lowly realm, which is our physical world, the realm of the intermediary, sort of metaphysical, but they're physical, but they're meta forces of the mazalis, of the constellations, and then beyond that, the world of the malachim. V'zeh Shchem. And this is what it means. I gave you Shchem Echad. Shchem is Rosh Tevis, Shafal, Koichav, Malach. Shchem. That through Yosef HaTzaddik's double portion, that's a result of Yaakov Avinu's tefillah, He was bringing down shefa, down upon the whole system of existence, shafal, koich of malach. All of this, Yaakov Avinu gained through his prayer. Again, Torah base, V'chulu, emayri v'chulu, b'tfilasi u'bakashasi, b'tzleisi u'u'usi. They're my tefillah, and the sword of tefillah, another reference again to Torah Beis, that Yaakov Avinu was able to draw down through his prayer. And from that, he was able to give over to Yosef, and that means Shechem is that his tefillah caused for there to be a zivuk kuchrichu shchinte, which caused parnasa to flow down through Shechem, shuffle, or really, let's say from the back to the front, right? Malach, koichav, shuffle, the aspect of Shechem. Now here we come to an incredible and very famous passage of Rebbe Nachman. This is Eis Gimel. It also shows up in a different form, which is not so common in Likutei Moharan. It happens a few times, not so common, certainly not as prominent as this. It shows up as a completely different Torah. This same drasha over there, it's expanded into our Kuf Yud Beis 112. So we're going to get to this again, but over here Rebbe Nachman intertwines it into a larger Torah of Torah Tess. And this is fire. This Eis Gimel is fire. Okay, so let's try to do it with the last few minutes that we have. Says when a person stands up to David as a boy machshavei zaros uklipas u'mesav v'noisai, the person is challenged by machshavei zaros, foreign thoughts, klipas, different shells that are preventing that person from accessing Kudsha Baruch Hu and trying to draw Kudsha Baruch Hu down into Shchinte. V'nishar b'choshech, and the person's in darkness. V'eni yachal ispal, and he's not able to pray. K'masha kasav, as the pasuk in Eicha says, Sarkaisa ba'analach me'avar tefillah, you've surrounded yourself with a cloud and you've prevented tefillah from reaching you, which is a pasuk that Rebbe Nachman quoted already in Torah Beis, and he learned that these are the trei nanan and the mechas and al einin. These are the two clouds that cover the eyes, which is a reference to Esav and Yishmael, like we mentioned. Uksiv, and the pasuk in Tehillim says, Sabiv Rishayim Yishalachon. Sabiv Rishayim Yishalachon. The Rishayim surround, and we've been learning about surrounding from the standpoint of Emunah. That's where Emunah is. Emunah is Igulim. Emunah is Yerushalayim Savivla. Harim Savivla. Emunah is the Bechina of the Egla, right? It's Igulim. And so the Rishayim are also in that place because they want to prevent us from accessing Emunah, which is Tefillah. And so Saviv Rishayim Yishalachon. Sha'ar Rishayim Ainu HaKlipas Misav V'Noisai. And a person feels surrounded. And the pasuk continues, Krum Zulus Levenei Adam. Kirum Zulus, says the Gemara. That's a reference to Tefillah, which is Kirum, which is a Davra Emid Barum Shalaylam and Zulas. And people are denigrating it. So when do Sabiv Rishayim Yishalachon? Kurum Zulus Levenei Adam. At the time when a person is trying to daven. She'amedes Barum Shalaylam, as Chazal tell us the Gemara in Brachas Vav Amud Beis. Vidah, says the Rebbe, no matter what, and again, we're not going out to Torah Kuf Yud Beis. If we were learning this properly, you'd have to learn that now. But the Rebbe is much more strong over there. That he says that a person, mamish, not just when he's davening, he says a person is so covered in klipas and darkness, where a person begins to think that v'sham mekaymai, like this is where I belong, this is really who I am. The Rebbe uses very strong lashonos over there, and I have told dresses about that. We're going to get to there when we get to there. But the Rebbe says, "V'da sheish psachim harbe v'choshech hazelatzis misham." You're not stuck. There are many doors out of the darkness. You can get out, and you know how I know you can get out? Because the Gemara says in Yom Amud Beis that if a person wants to become impure, they open the doors. Says the Rebbe, good. If there's a door in, there's a door out. There's plenty of psachim because you had to get in somehow. So if you can get in, you can get out. There's doors into the darkness. There's doors out of the darkness. All this is very, very deep. I'm not going to go into the whole thing because the doors that bring you in are the doors that take you out. We're going to save that for Kuf Yud Beis. I'm just giving you a little hint. Avala adamu iver, but a person is blind. Ve'ein yodea limsa pesach, and he doesn't know how to find the gate. He doesn't know how to find the door. So there could be a door all at once, but he doesn't know how to get out because he's blind. Because the clouds are blocking his eyes. Anan and mechas and al einin. Says the Heilige Rebbe, you know how to find your way out. You need some light, because you need a light to be able to find the door. Says the Rebbe, how do you find light? V'dah, says the Heilige Rebbe, Schusi Agunaleinu, Shal Yidei Emes Zoichelim Tzeh Pesach. Through emes, through authenticity, through vulnerability, you can find the gate. Because the only thing that's really preventing you from getting out is ego. The only thing that's preventing you from getting out, it's like a person who blows up there's a thing like this, who just needs to try out the life safety vest on the plane. There's people like this, and he goes and they get themselves so blown up in the bathroom over there that they can't get them out. Because they're so puffed up. It's just a good metaphor. They're so puffed up that you can't get out of the bathroom. You're stuck in there. The way is you got to deflate. MS authenticity. Fascinatingly enough, the Gemara tells us kushta kai shikr loy kai. Kushta kai. What's kai? It means truth stands. What stands in this context is prayer, right? Karav Hashem l'chal karav l'chal hasher yikru be'emes. There's a connection between true prayer that's being miyachid kuchbruch u'shchinte and humility and authenticity. Kushta kai. Right. So with truth, I can access prayer.
And sheker is esav sheker chen.
Bidyuk, with all the rest of it. Absolutely. Ki ikar ara meir hu HaKadosh Baruch Hu, says Rebbe Nachman, don't be mistaken. The greatest light is Hashem. K'may shekasav Hashem oyri v'yishi. Hashem, you're my light. And through inauthenticity, like we mentioned yesterday in Keser Shem Tov, through inauthenticity, a person is misalik HaKadosh Baruch Hu from a person's life. It doesn't matter how religious the person looks. The inauthenticity pushes God out of a person's life. Do not carry God's name in your vanity. Right? It doesn't just mean in vain, but lashav. If a person is living a life of shav, God is not there, no matter what. Like we said 100% of the time. Shav misalik as a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Shav, meaning something that is inauthentic, something that isn't true, pushes God away. The pasuk says, those who speak falsehoods will not remain in the presence of the divine. But through emes HaKadosh Baruch Hu shaykhin, that brings HaKadosh Baruch Hu into your experience. As the pasuk says that we just quoted, Karav Hashem l'chal kairav l'chal asher yikru be'emes. That when a person calls out in an authentic way, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is present with that person. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with you, then you find a way out. Because the way out is through. The way out is vulnerability. The way out is working through our issues. That is the way out. That thing that was preventing you from accessing those doors, which is preventing you from davening, okay, you ready for this? Strap in. The last few minutes we have left. V'zeh perish, soihar tasela teva. This is one of Rebbe Nachman's most famous teachings. Sohar, it's called. And again, it really shows up in Kuf Yud Beis. But over here, it's just a brief hint. Soihar tasela teva. Noach is told, make for yourself a light source for the teva. And everybody knows, Perish Rashi, there are two opinions. Yesh Imrim Chalain. Some people say that it was a window. V'yesh Imrim Even Toiv. And some people say that it was a stone, a precious diamond. Says the Rebbe, what's the difference between a window and a diamond? This is so deep, I'm telling you. To do this in 5 minutes is like torturous, but you got to do what you got to do. But there's so much depth over here. Oh my gosh. You could build a whole philosophy just on what the Rebbe is about to say. There are two things, window and light. A window has no light of its own, right? It's just a vehicle to allow light to enter in, but it is not a light source. It just allows light in. If there's no light shining outside the window, the window doesn't help. But a holy stone, a shining stone, a precious stone, even if it's dark outside, it shines in and of itself. Says the Rebbe, what does that mean? There are some people, shediburim hu chalain. Their words are a window, which means it doesn't really have the ability to shine in and of itself. It's communicating someone else's light. But if that light is stopping, it's not really coming from the person himself or herself, right? They're just sort of transmitting the words of somebody else, but they are not shining. They're just a window. They're just sort of, a vehicle to allow light in. Says the Rebbe, that's what Rashi says. Not yesh oimrim. Like there's some opinions that say that it's a chaloi. No. Says the Rebbe, yesh oimrim. There's one kind of speech. Yesh oimrim. No. There's one kind of dibur. That's a chaloi. It's a speech that's just communicative of light. Va'amirasam nase chalain, which is good, but it's not really, really, really real yet. But v'yesh oimrim even tov. Which again, in this context, is real authenticity. That their own words, that they're not saying someone else's words, it's not even Tehillim. And Rebbe Nachman says in In Olam L'Trufa, he was sending his tefillos from Likutei Tefillos to his son Rebbe Yitzchak. He said, don't think that this is hispodidus now because you're saying my words. You got to say your words, So there's yesh aimrim that's that's chaloin, and it's beautiful. You can say Torah from others. You can say tefillah from others, but then there's a yesh aimrim that's really coming from yourself. That's an even toiv, right? That's not shining someone else's light. That's shining your own light. And that's real authenticity. V'das, says the Rebbe, sha'akol fi Geulah emes. Everything is going to be in accordance with your authenticity. Because again, ki ikra aru HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the light. HaKadosh Baruch Hu etzem emes. And Hashem is truth. V'ikra shtoikikol shel Hashem is barach. Listen to this line. To tattoo this on our chest, The main yearning of God, eina ela emes. God just wants authenticity, chevra. He doesn't want shows. He doesn't want plays. It could be the nicest thing. He just wants the truth. Rachmana liba boy. He just wants a real thing. That's what God yearns for, because God is real and He wants real godly things. V'zeh, so this is pshat in the psukim as they continue. We'll go to the end of the paragraph. Forgive me for going just a few minutes over. V'zeh, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Soyhar tasel teva, make a light source. Ve'el ama tichal enem lamala, and hang it above. Not hang it above, but rather the roof of the teva. Ve'el ama should run off to an ama to allow the rain to flow off of it. Says the Rebbe, Techal Ena could be a lashon of Atechal Nefesh David, to yearn. Lashon Atechal. Techal Ena Milamala. Says the Rebbe, what should we be yearning for? Ve'el Ama Techal Ena Milamala. Says the Rebbe, you know what Ama is? Ama is Dibur. Why is Ama Dibur? Because the Hey is He Moitza'is. These are the 5 moitza'is. These are the 5 different areas from which speech derives: in the mouth, the lip letters, the tongue letters, the palate letters, the throat letters, the breath letters. Haklulim me'eshumayim, which are connected of fire and water. V'az yishtoikek HaKadosh Baruch Hu m'lamala lishkan etzlai. And when a person is davening, so then HaKadosh Baruch Hu is drawn down to that person. And when a person has HaKadosh Baruch Hu dwelling with them, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu becomes light for that person. V'zehu, and that's these 3 words, Ama, Techal Ena Milamala, which is, again, Ama is Eish, Mayim, and the Hey, right? So the Hey is the 5 parts from which speech derives, and speech itself is the conjugation between fire and water, so that's Eish, Mayim, and the Hey, that's Ama, is Rosh Tevis Ama Tichal Ena Milamala Rosh Tevis Emes. This spells Emes. Kehal Yedidim Emes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Chaymed Milamala. Not only do we yearn for Emes, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu yearns for us. Ve'el Ama Tichal Ena Milamala. You know what God is yearning for from above? Ve'el Ama Tichal Ena Milamala. Ama Dibur Yesh Oimrim Even Toiv, which is Rosh Tevis Emes. HaKadosh Baruch Hu then desires Lishkan Ima Adam K'moshe Kasav Karav Hashem L'chal Kairav. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us. L'chal Asher Yigru Be'emes, to all those who call out to Him in truth. Va'az, you know what happens then, says Hashem? U'pesach ha'teva b'tzida tasim. Place the opening to the teva on the side. Hainu ha'teva, which is dibur, ki yadua from the Baal Shem, that the teva is really dibur, and the measurements of the teva is lashon, right? 30 and 50 and 5. Hainu ha'teva hayotze be'emes, a word that comes out of truth. That will give you the opening in the darkness. Pesach HaTeva. The Teva will give you a Pesach out of the Choshech, because you have your Emes, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the light, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with you. And your Tzayar, your light source, is Tzayar Tasal Teva. Your words are shining in Even Tov with authenticity. And where is the Pesach going to be placed? in the tzida, the side. What's the side, says the Rebbe? It's a reference to Esav. Hainu aklipa hatzad sayid. This is the aspect of Esav, who's the Inyan kamashakasav ki tzayid befiv. Esav's Inyan was tzayid befiv. He was trying to prevent us from davening, to trap our tefillas, right? The Inyan of sabiv rishamis halachon, right? To create a protective boundary around our emunah-oriented circular experience of prayer. Ki tzayid befiv. Says the Rebbe, if you're davening in a way of tzayar tasa l'teva, yesh aimrim chaloin, one level of authenticity, yesh aimrim eben toiva, a higher level of authenticity, ve'al amma techal enem elamala, and you recognize that a Kodesh Baruch Hu is yearning for amma, which is dibor, that is amma techal enem elamala rosh hateva's emes, then upesach hateva. Your words will create an opening in the darkness. Which darkness? Bitsida. The aspect of the tzad sayid of Esav ki tzayid befiv. In the beginning he wasn't able to daven because of the darkness. But a person, the order is reversed, right? You should daven and then go out of the darkness. Says the Rebbe, no, already you're out of the darkness. Then you daven properly and you recognize that there really is no chayshech, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the R. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants your broken heart. HaKadosh Baruch Hu pushed you into that place so that you'd get to a place of brokenness. Tashev Enosh Adaka, the pasuk says Hashem pushes people into brokenness, and then Matoimer Shuvu B'nei Adam, and then he says, good, now you can return to me with truth and with humility and with vulnerability. And then it says Tachtiyim Shneim Ushlishim. You should make the teva 3 layers. What are the 3 layers? Shchem, Shafel, Koichav, Mazel. Hainu Olam HaShafel, V'Olam HaGalgalim, V'Olam HaSeichel. And then he throws in Ach I'ef Shel Ispal Rak Shalomei Torah. But again, you got to be learning Torah. Ki Lo Yam Haaretz Chassid. Chassid is all about davening. And we have to learn in order to daven. Uksiv Meiser Azim Shmayat Torah. If a person turns their ear away from hearing Torah, Gam Tfilas Te'eva, and that was written in by the Ksav Yad Chaverim, who just made that note to again bring us back to the balance. There's always got to be Torah and Tefillah, and it's all about vulnerability and this Inyan of Shaiv, but without a Ratzai, it's imbalance. You see, the Rebbe is always bringing us back to synthesis, to balance. Shreinu Matev Chakeinu Manayim Garleinu and Giluyim Chadashim. What a privilege. Thank you so much.
ואתה האב שלי שכל כך אוהב אותי, האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני